January 1967. American generals called the Iron Triangle a dagger pointed at Saigon, a 300-square-kilometer Viet Cong fortress just miles from the South Vietnamese capital. Over 30,000 troops were sent to erase it in an operation so vast, even its architects could not predict the cost. Was this overwhelming show of force the turning point it promised? Or the first crack in an impossible war? Here is what really happened at the heart of the campaign. Northwest of Saigon, the Iron Triangle sprawled across 300 square kilometers, bordered by the Saigon and Thi Tin rivers. The land here was a patchwork of thick jungle, tangled undergrowth, and swampy lowlands. From above, the region formed a blunt wedge, hence the nickname Dagger, because it was aimed at the capital. Its natural boundaries gave the Viet Cong a shield against large-scale attack, while the dense canopy and muddy waterways made movement slow and dangerous for outsiders. Hidden beneath the trees, an elaborate network of tunnels and bunkers ran for miles, connecting command posts, supply depots, and underground hospitals. These passageways allowed the Viet Cong to move unseen, store weapons, and coordinate attacks with remarkable speed. The Iron Triangle was not just a patch of jungle, it was a command hub, a logistical artery, and a symbol of resistance. For American commanders, the threat was clear. From this stronghold, the Viet Cong could strike Saigon at will, threatening the city's security and undermining South Vietnamese control. Intelligence reports describe the area as a nerve center for Military Region 4, directing operations against the capital and the surrounding countryside. Every attempt to dislodge the enemy met with ambushes and sudden disappearances, fighters melting into the tunnels or vanishing across the rivers. Faced with a fortress built into the land itself, U.S. planners decided that only a massive, coordinated assault could surround and clear the Iron Triangle. The geography left no room for half measures. To root out the Viet Cong, the operation would have to be as vast and unyielding as the jungle it aimed to erase. 2nd Field Force Vietnam took command of the largest Allied ground operation yet attempted in the war. More than 30,000 troops, American and South Vietnamese, were committed to the plan. The force package included the U.S. 1st and 25th Infantry Divisions, the 173rd Airborne Brigade, the 11th Armored Cavalry Regiment, and an entire South Vietnamese Infantry Division with ARVN Ranger battalions in support. The scale of this commitment reflected both the perceived threat of the Iron Triangle and the ambition to deliver a decisive blow. The maneuver concept was built around a classic hammer and anvil tactic. Blocking forces sealed the perimeter of the Iron Triangle, their lines drawn tight along the Saigon and Thi Tin rivers. Meanwhile, assault units advanced from multiple directions, driving into the heart of the jungle. The goal was to trap the Viet Cong inside, prevent escape through the tunnels or across the rivers, and systematically clear every strong point. Orders authorized the use of overwhelming force, including artillery and airstrikes, within the operational boundaries. The area was designated a free-fire zone for the duration. Anyone remaining inside after the cordon closed was considered hostile. Planning documents emphasized speed, coordination, and total coverage. Engineers were assigned to destroy bunkers and tunnel complexes as infantry swept through. Armored cavalry units stood ready to reinforce or exploit breakthroughs. Intelligence, logistics, and medical support were integrated at every level. The doctrine behind Cedar Falls left little to chance: control the terrain, control the tempo, and deny the enemy any sanctuary. With the plan in place, the largest Allied force yet assembled in Vietnam prepared to move on the Iron Triangle. On January 15, 1967, the village of Ben Suc woke to the sound of loudspeakers and the heavy thud of helicopters. U.S. and South Vietnamese troops had surrounded the village overnight, sealing every path and river crossing. Soldiers moved through the narrow lanes, instructing residents to assemble at the school. Anyone who tried to slip away faced the threat of being mistaken for the enemy. In the confusion, families gathered what they could carry: blankets, rice, a few tools, leaving livestock wandering untended in the fields. The operation had a clear order: evacuate every civilian, screen for suspected Viet Cong, and remove the village from the map. Over 3,500 people were herded into makeshift holding areas. The process was slow and chaotic. Delays mounted as landing craft and trucks failed to arrive on time. Children cried in the heat, clutching their mothers' hands. Field kitchens offered thin soup and rice, but supplies quickly ran short. U.S. medics treated minor wounds and dehydration, but the sense of anxiety grew with each passing hour. Military police and ARVN officers called out names from lists, separating men between the ages of 15 and 45 for questioning. Some were taken away for further interrogation and did not return. The rest waited, uncertain if they would see their homes again. A survivor later recalled that they were told to gather at the village center. No one knew what was happening. They were taken away in trucks and boats, and their homes were destroyed. They lost everything. The evacuation ended any illusion of normalcy. Elderly women wept as they watched the only world they had ever known disappear behind the dust of departing convoys. For the Americans, the process was no less jarring. A veteran who took part remembered that it was a chaotic and emotional scene. The villagers were scared and confused. They tried to help, but the situation was overwhelming. As the last groups boarded transport, demolition teams moved in. Rome plow bulldozers, massive armored machines designed for jungle warfare, began to raze Ben Suc. Houses, schools, and market stalls fell in minutes, reduced to splinters and dust. Engineers collapsed tunnels and burned remaining structures. The village, once a hub of commerce and daily life for thousands, vanished beneath bare earth and churned mud. Aerial photos taken days later showed nothing but scars where homes and rice paddies had stood. In the refugee camps near Phu Quang, the hardship continued. Registration logs listed family groups, but records were incomplete. Some children were separated from parents. Others arrived with only distant relatives. Food was scarce and medical care limited. Many evacuees faced suspicion from government officials, accused of supporting the Viet Cong simply because of where they had lived. The trauma of displacement, loss of land, community, and identity would endure long after the operation ended. The story of Ben Suc became a symbol of the human cost of Operation Cedar Falls. Official reports noted the evacuation as a tactical necessity, but for those uprooted, the destruction of the village marked the end of a way of life. The land itself, now declared off-limits and subject to attack, offered no hope of return. As the Iron Triangle was cleared and leveled, the people of Ben Suc carried their memories into an uncertain future, scattered and dispossessed. Beneath the churned earth and shattered tree lines of the Iron Triangle, a hidden world waited. The Viet Cong had shaped the ground itself into a weapon. Their tunnels ran deep, sometimes 3 levels down, threading under villages, rice paddies, and jungle clearings. Entrances were disguised as termite mounds or hidden beneath roots. Passageways twisted and narrowed, some barely wide enough for a man to crawl. Trapdoors sealed off chambers and dead ends masked escape routes. The air was thick and stale, laced with the smell of damp clay and sweat. For American troops, the tunnels were more than an obstacle. They were a mystery. Early in the operation, infantry patrols stumbled across concealed hatches and narrow pits. A few men volunteered to go in. These were the first of the so-called tunnel rats. Most were small and wiry, armed with pistols, flashlights, and a coil of string. They slid into the darkness one by one, feeling for tripwires or booby traps, listening for the faintest scrape of movement ahead. Sometimes they met nothing but silence and empty chambers. Other times, a sudden shot or explosion would signal a deadly encounter just feet below the surface. One composite tunnel rat, a stand-in for dozens of men who told their stories later, described the sensation as like crawling inside the enemy's mind. He mapped out rooms with a ball of wire, marking the way back. He found sleeping mats, stacks of rice, and sometimes the remains of hurried meals. In one sector, he crawled into a chamber that opened into a larger room. There he found a field hospital, beds made from bamboo, bottles of medicine, surgical tools scattered across a crude table. The hospital was empty, abandoned in a rush, but the smell of ether and blood lingered. This discovery, made between January 10th and 12th by engineers attached to the 1st Infantry Division, revealed just how advanced the underground network had become. The hospital included a surgery, recovery cots, and stores of medical supplies, all shielded by layers of earth and trapdoors. Clearing these tunnels was slow, dangerous work. Engineers tried explosives, gas, and bulldozers, but the results were mixed. Charges collapsed the upper levels, yet deeper chambers often survived. Gas could drive out defenders for a few hours, but fresh air vents and hidden doors let the Viet Cong return once the fumes cleared. Flooding rarely worked. The soil absorbed water, and watertight doors blocked the flow. Bulldozers sealed entrances, but new ones would appear days later. Each tunnel rat learned to trust his instincts, moving inch by inch, always aware that a single mistake could be fatal. The intelligence gathered was invaluable. In the course of Cedar Falls, engineers and tunnel rats uncovered thousands of documents, orders, maps, and codebooks, along with weapons, radios, and propaganda materials. Some rooms held printing presses, others radio transmitters or stockpiles of rice. The scale was staggering, over 400 tunnels destroyed, yet many more remained. Army reports admitted that destruction was often temporary. The Viet Cong would return, dig out blocked passages, and rebuild what was lost. For the men who went underground, the work left marks that lasted long after the operation ended. The darkness, the silence, the constant sense of danger. These became their memories of the Iron Triangle. Above ground, the jungle was cleared and villages erased. But below, the tunnels told a story of ingenuity and resilience, a battlefield hidden from the sun, where every foot of progress came at tremendous risk. Operation Cedar Falls produced a mountain of statistics, numbers that for commanders measured both progress and cost. Official reports tallied 700 Viet Cong killed in action over the course of the operation. Another 700 were captured or detained, including suspected guerrillas and support personnel. Allied forces, by contrast, lost 83 men killed and 345 wounded. These figures, stamped into after-action summaries, became the primary ledger of success for the campaign. Destruction went far beyond casualties. Engineers and infantry, working in tandem, destroyed 1,100 bunkers, 400 tunnels, and more than 500 above-ground structures. In the process, over 3,700 tons of rice were seized, enough to feed a division for months, or destroyed to deny it to the enemy. Weapons, radios, and printing presses were recovered in the hundreds. One cache alone yielded 491,553 pages of documents, including operational orders, maps, and codebooks. Each item was cataloged, boxed, and shipped to intelligence analysts for review. The logistical toll was equally heavy. Bulldozers flattened entire hamlets, and Rome plows carved hundreds of acres of jungle into bare earth. The Iron Triangle, once a maze of cover and concealment, became a landscape stripped of hiding places. For a brief period, the area was rendered unusable for guerrilla operations. Every metric, from casualties to bunkers destroyed to rice confiscated, was entered into the official record as evidence of a decisive blow. Yet the numbers also recorded the price paid. Allied casualties, though lower than enemy estimates, were not insignificant. Each loss reverberated through the units involved, from rifle squads to command posts. The tally of destroyed structures included not just enemy bunkers, but homes, schools, and market stalls. Behind every ton of seized rice or stack of captured documents lay the traces of a community uprooted and a countryside transformed by war. For military planners, these data points offered a sense of control, a way to quantify the results of an operation that had upended thousands of lives. The statistics would soon become the basis for debate over what was gained, what was lost, and how to measure victory in a war where every metric carried its own shadow. Within weeks of the last American patrols leaving the Iron Triangle, intelligence intercepts and field reports began to track new Viet Cong movements back into the cleared zones. By March 1967, MACV situation, summaries described fresh ambushes along the old resettlement roads and the reappearance of supply caches in areas bulldozed only months before. Engineers who returned to survey the ground found evidence of hastily repaired tunnels and new fighting positions. Even as official after-action reports counted hundreds of enemy killed and thousands of bunkers destroyed, the practical reality on the ground was harder to measure. Two historians, each steeped in the records but divided by discipline, have spent years debating what these patterns mean. The first, a military operationalist, points to the immediate disruption: the destruction of over 1,100 bunkers, the seizure of nearly 4,000 tons of rice, and the capture of more than 491,000 pages of documents. For him, these numbers reflect a campaign that struck at the heart of the enemy's logistics and command structure. He notes that for a brief window, the Iron Triangle was rendered unusable for guerrilla operations, a feat no previous offensive had managed. Across the table sits a scholar focused on the human and political aftermath. She reads the same reports and sees a different story: the forced evacuation of entire villages, the razing of Ben Suk, and the transformation of farmland into wasteland, she argues, created a legacy of resentment and alienation. In her view, the body count and cash tallies, metrics that dominated official briefings, failed to capture the return of the Viet Cong or the erosion of South Vietnamese government legitimacy among the displaced. She cites declassified ARVN district reports from April and May 1967, which document renewed attacks and sabotage by Viet Cong units in the supposedly neutralized zone. The debate reaches its sharpest point on the question of reoccupation. U.S. Army and CIA summaries confirm that by early summer, the Iron Triangle was again a base of operations for the Viet Cong. The operationalist concedes the point, but insists that the intelligence haul and temporary disruption justified the effort. The humanitarian scholar counters that any measure of success must include the long-term effects on the population and the rapid return of the enemy. Both agree on the facts. The Iron Triangle was cleared, then reoccupied. The question, what in the end did the operation achieve, remains open, echoing through the archives and the memories of those who lived it. Within months, Viet Cong forces reclaimed the Iron Triangle, exposing the limits of overwhelming force against elusive resistance. Today, military planners still grapple with these lessons. How power alone cannot secure lasting change. The scars left on landscapes and lives remain, echoing through modern conflicts. In war, victory on paper rarely translates to peace on the ground. What endures is the human cost. Share your perspective in the comments.